Welcome to the new season of Love Thy Number. I am so excited to share stories from people who are loving the gift of their own Enneagram numbers. I'm Danae King. I'm a type 7, and I'm so happy to host this conversation with you.
Good morning. How are you, Nancy?
I am well, thank you. How are you, Danae?
Listen, for those of you that are listening on the podcast, you can't see her beautiful face, but I'm going to encourage you to, at some point, go over to YouTube, to my channel, and see this gorgeous smile on this woman this morning. So Nancy Bartelt is with me this morning. She lives in Kansas City, Kansas, and let me tell you why that is important right now. I am in Tequila, Georgia, and when we scheduled this Zoom call, I neglected to say, what state are you in? What time zone are you in? So I logged on at 10 o'clock like we had scheduled, and because you had sent me an email and said, I'm going to log on early, and you were not there. So word to you podcasters or Zoomers, or maybe it's just me. But Nancy, tell me first of all, how you discovered the Enneagram, which this conversation is centered around.
Yes. I grew up in the upper Midwest, and my dad was a pastor. My mom was a piano teacher, and they talked about it when I was a kid. They were interested in all kinds of different ideas and, ways that people grow. And my mom eventually got a master's degree in experiential education. So anyway, somewhere along that path, they would talk about Enneagram. And so I had this, vague recollection of that. And then when my husband and I first got married about 23 years ago, we came across a book that I think my parents had, and I was like, oh my goodness, let's look at this. And so we looked at it and read it and had fun with it. And then we started our family, fast forward 15 to 20 years. So a few years ago, I started thinking about it again with one of the e-courses I bought and was working through. And I just really couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
All the different layers of it were so fascinating. And the way you could see connections between people was such a big difference to me compared to other typing systems where you just, you find out what you are. And it's, of course, you're connected with others, but the Enneagram shows you so many powerful connections across the shape of it.
Yes.
That I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then a good friend of mine and we both couldn't stop thinking about it. And so we looked into this training program and got trained and have started coaching the last couple of years, and just love being able to talk to people about awareness and, certainly not fully aware ever, but, you can laugh louder and quicker when you see it more easily in yourself, in your life, the ruts and things that we can get into and hopefully get out of them a little bit quicker once we've got some of that awareness.
Yeah, right. Oh, I love that. I think you're the first adult I've talked to who said their parents had it years ago. I know people that have been studying it for 25 years, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody as an adult say, yeah, my parents knew of it. That's fantastic. So you and I connected because, again, social media has such a wonderful, time of connection. It's really got some down things right now, especially.
Right.
So I just try to stay, in tune with what gives me opportunity for growth and keep my mind there because, as you know, we 7s, and coincidentally, Nancy is also a 7. I didn't seek out another 7, but you are. And so I saw that you were doing this, an online Zoom meeting for back to school. And while I don't have children, I have children, but they're all grown, and I don't have the same situation as you do and a lot of young parents. But my daughter is a teacher, and she has 3 small children, 2 of them in school, one's the baby. And then I have a son who's got 2 children, and they are exactly where you are and the whole country is. And why I thought that presentation would be so good, just to learn for myself and to tap into what these children might be thinking, might be needing. And as I say about being a grandparent, our goal is to support the parents. My goal with my grandchildren is not a do-over. You know, oh, this time I know so much more, so I'll be a better parent, grandparent. That's not my job. But to be able to, especially in this time, have conversation with them, and understand some of the things they might be thinking. And so if you would talk a little bit, actually, I should have asked you this ahead of time. I have your workbook pulled up online. I don't want to go through the whole workbook because I want to, tell people how to be directed to you. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to just show on the screen.
Sure. Yeah.
We can talk about you getting that workbook out any other way you want. But tell me why, as somebody who does relationship coaching, and you even do marriage coaching, why you thought right now would be the best time to do the back to school.
Yes. Well, I, like we talked before, we started recording. My degree is music therapy, and I'd worked in the schools way before I had kids doing music therapy, and then of course had kids, and we've homeschooled our kids when they were younger, and then had them generally kind of be going to public school and high school, and have done some private school in the middle here. And then last year I was able to be a classroom substitute in many of our schools in the area. And I just love kids. I love teaching. I love relationships. I love helping encourage families. And so I just had seen, lots of different ways that education works well, and it changes in different seasons for meeting different kids and their needs. And then you insert, of course, this pandemic. And so it's like, oh my goodness, almost everybody's thrown off their game, especially kids who are going, to school outside their home during the day. And I had, lots of people that I love and lots of teachers I love that I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just crazy. What the pandemic has already done with the past couple of months and uncertainty, but then going into, we don't even know what we're going into. People don't even know week to week. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be not online? And so I just kept thinking about the Enneagram, and there's kind of various ways teachers teach about children and typing, and the Enneagram. And I felt like, gosh, even if you're not looking at a kid's specific type, not necessarily typing kids, although I think it can be really helpful to look at children's tendencies and meet them where they are, whatever that means. And it might change as they're growing and evolving. But I just thought, wow, those centers just really jumped out at me. Our head center, our body center, and our heart center. And the big deal for each of those centers is, being body-centered, control is such a big issue, and being heart-centered, connection is such a big issue, and being head-centered, security is such a big issue. And all three of those were like blasted, or however we say it, just destroyed, really. No one feels any sense of control over what their normal school routine is. We've had this loss of connection, this extreme isolation for many people for many months. And then we've had all this uncertainty with things changing from week to week. And so I just thought, wow, even if we don't talk a lot about type, we can talk about what to do to help each person in their center to feel a little bit more encouragement for all the uncertainty and loss of control and loss of connection, as well as helping everybody realize, we are wholehearted people, we are whole-bodied people, we are whole-minded people in our best selves. So everybody needs to think about, what can we do? What are those little bitty rhythms of life that we can do to nurture ourselves to be healthy in our body, to be healthy in our mental health, and to be healthy with our emotional connections with others and ourselves?
See, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation. Okay, I wanted to pull this chart up. For those of you that are on the podcast, we're going to talk about the centers of intelligence that she just referenced. And for those of you that are looking on YouTube, which I would encourage you to do, she just talked about the body, the head, and the heart, and what's going on in each of those centers. Beautiful chart on the 9 types. But what I wanted to get to was you had this part about let it go. And this is, again, with the children to address what might be going on with them. This really jumped out at me. And she has some great suggestions on how to let it go. But this is addressing what she asks in. What are some simple, safe ways my students or kids can express their anger, sadness, or worry? And what I think is just such an important thing and I'd like you to talk about this, is sometimes when they express it and they look angry and it comes out as anger, it could definitely be another emotion. Do you agree?
I agree. I really do. I had done some work a couple of months or years ago, and there's this emotional funnel, and we talked about how the hot emotions are at the top. Kind of our behaviors and actions are at the top, and right under those behaviors and actions are the hot emotions of anger and, annoyance, irritation. But under those is usually something more, some sadness, some fear. And so, I love how you put that is true. When there's anger, there is that something underneath it. And in a lot of cases, especially now, I feel like it shows like, I don't know what's going on. There's this loss of control, and there's this fear about what's uncertain and what's going to happen in our family or our world. So that kind of feeds that.
And she's got some great suggestions on how to let it go. But one of them, again, several suggestions, and I'll put a link to this, if that's okay, to the workbook in the show notes for the podcast. I really encourage you to go look at these if you just are feeling, discombobulated or whatever it is with your own homeschooling children, or if you are a teacher. I know people have been given so much encouragement and different ways to handle this, but this was so cute. A screaming pillow. I love that. And I've never heard this other one. Maybe it's because I'm not in the kid world anymore, but you said scribble and crush the paper and play trash get ball. Did you come up with that?
I don't think I did. I can't take credit, but it was just one of those random things I feel like you kind of just see, and it's an easy thing to do. But yeah, the scribbling certainly can be just like, get it out and crunch it up and crush it and then throw it.
And then make a game out of it, or just something to release that
exactly
energy. And the other thing that I wanted to just bring out, again, this is a wonderful workbook that she has developed, but on the section that she calls Write It Out, this was just a beautiful thing that I guess I hadn't, again, I'm not in the classroom, but you said you have a collective gratitude and an individual gratitude. Have you seen that play out before in the collective?
I can speak to my own, to our own little family, how it's worked. As I've been thinking about this, I thought back to my days as a sub, and when you're just there for a day, of course, you're just trying to get done what the teacher, the bare bones of maybe a little bit of what the teacher had hoped you would do while they were gone. So I certainly didn't think of some of these things then, although I did bring my koosh ball, and I mentioned that in the presentation, and that was a great way to just kind of engage people and engage the body, and then the mind is engaged because they're watching where the ball goes. But anyway, back to the gratitude. With our kids, we felt like, yes, this is such an important habit, and so my oldest kids are 19, 16, and then our younger two are 12 and 7. And so the older two, when I was homeschooling them, you'd have to do your thankfuls. That was just part of your morning routine. And sometimes we had a book that we did all together. And then sometimes they had their own books. And sometimes it was on a list for the week. You're just going to write down at least 3 things that you're thankful for. And then with our younger kids this summer, I've had like more of a daily list, or it's like a clipboard for the week. And then, you're not expected to do all that much. It's summer, but those little bitty things, get up, get your dishwasher emptied, feed the dog, and then write something that you're thankful for, or draw something that you're thankful for. And then during the pandemic, I have, as a 7 does, so many ideas of what I would think would be lovely to do as a family during this time. And one of them was, let's have a collective thankful board, or a place that we can just see in front of us these things, that we're going to pray about, that we're worried about, but also then these things that we're thankful for. And so together we have this visual that we can come back to once a week, or maybe, a couple times during dinner, and be reminded of these blessings and of these ways that we've seen goodness and joy and helpfulness and wisdom still in the world.
Still a lot, yes. And I think there's such power in that, the collective gratitude, to have a group of kids, because as we know, emotions will just ripple through. We see it play out with adults all the time. You get it in a panic, and panic spreads.
Oh my goodness, it's contagious. Yes.
That's the word. That's what it is. Well, if you've got a group of kids and somebody, especially I can just see the little ones,
Yes.
see something that you're thankful for. And when one starts, then the others begin to, well, I want to say what I'm thankful for.
Absolutely.
And I think there's such power in collective gratitude. I guess I haven't really heard that term, because we hear a lot about developing our own gratitude. Attitude of gratitude was a very big buzzword, but my goodness, how calming and shifting in the mental energy and the body energy.
In the body, yes. It's contagious in the room, but also within our own centers of intelligence, I think. And what you were mentioning about, the panic and the ways those things are contagious, we would talk about that with our kids too. When somebody's complaining, man, it can zap the energy out of a room, and it's contagious. It starts to make me want to complain if I hear a kid constantly complain. But the same is true for gratefulness and for joy. The more, like you said, I can picture that sweet little group, at the end of the classroom day, we're just going to write on our big dry erase or make a giant poster board, and we share like, oh, I saw Johnny helping Susie pick up those books when they spilled, or, you can go on, and they're all going to be eager to jump in and share. And then they've got this visual and this mental kind of settling practice that reminds them of the good.
What a great idea. I love that.
Thank you.
And let's go back to what you talked about, your music earlier. There's a lot about, in this whole presentation, it's kind of woven in different areas about how music affects us. And so talk about that and how the brain is wired for.
Yes. I would love to. Yes. As I shared, I think earlier, my degree is music therapy. And as I was telling you before we recorded, I've gotten to do some of that, but not lately as an official music therapist. However, I feel like threads of that background and that education have come in so handy and so beautifully in my life in lots of ways, working with kids and just creativity. And I've taught piano lessons. And one thing in my piano experience, I taught a method, Simply Music, that is just wonderful, but has a big focus on improvisation. And Neil Moore, who's the creator of Simply Music, talks so much about innovation, or how improvisation and innovation are so closely related. The more that we make things up as we go, the more creative we are with music or art or whatever it is, it teaches the brain to practice innovation. And so, the world, if nothing else, has a place where innovation can thrive and can bless people when it's used, for good and in wise ways. And so in this time when everyone's making things up as they go along, I'm reminded about the improvisation piece of music, and the power of practicing that can be so good, moving forward into uncertain times. But backing up, again, to kind of the centers in the brain, and thinking about music and how our bodies are wired for music. We've got rhythm built into us, just designed into us with the way that our hearts beat, the way that our bodies breathe, but also in the way that we walk. And even if somebody has a limp or uses a cane, there is still a rhythm with the way that they walk and the way that we talk. When I was learning and teaching something music, we talked a lot about just the command of rhythm that people have with language.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have a great command of language. So many people will say, oh, I'm not musical, but it's not true. We've got wired, we're wired for music in our bodies, and then even just with our language, how we can have this rhythm. And so I think it's like music and art can be, and just play, people can feel that they've outgrown that. And I think it's so important, and maybe this is my sevenness shining through, but I just really believe that a person of any age can benefit from having a playful spirit, from having a creative spirit, from experiencing music or experiencing art. But the brain, back to the brain, I always want to go back to the brain because it really is scientifically right there. That music connects with us in the limbic system, which is in the middle of your brain, and it ties in with emotion and memory. And I saw this so much when I worked at a nursing home, and you'd have people who were very disoriented and had dementia and wouldn't know what day it was, who they were, who you were, but you could start singing, "Let Me Call You Sweetheart," and they would know every word. And certainly that didn't mean that they were oriented, to reality exactly, but they were oriented to a part of reality the best way that they could be in that moment. And there was this truth, this reality that we shared together that just, I'll never forget. It just was really impactful for me to see that way that music tied in. And then my other, one of many examples, and maybe you've had this with emotion and memory and music and smells, like certain smells, can remind you of a time in your life.
Yes. Yes.
Music can do that too. Just a certain song you may have listened to, 12 times in a row every couple days. When I was in high school, I would just put, record something if I could off the radio with my tape player. And I think if it came on again, I'd record it again. So sometimes I'd have them, like, you didn't get all of it. You got to make sure you get all of it. And so just over and over, and you listen, you go, oh my goodness, I hear that song. I can picture what my room looked like. I can picture what I was worried about at school. I can picture my friends and, the Big Bangs and all of that stuff. So it's so powerful that I just said to my people at the presentation, if nothing else, make a playlist, make a pandemic playlist for yourself, or a back to school playlist that you can go to and really tap into that power of calming your heart, of, having those memories and those positive ways that you can nurture your self-care, basically. Yes, but using music to do that is really, really important.
I know. It's interesting. I'm just thinking about this. We sing to the babies all the time. Yes. I mean, when they're little. Right now, I've got one that's, she's almost 19 months old. And of course, you sing. Oh. I love rocking and singing, but I love this stage where we begin singing and we do little hand motions and we do an itsy bitsy spider. And she knows, even though she can't talk. She says some words, but she can't, communicate a lot of words with me. But there's that, she knows at the very end that the itsy bitsy spider is going to get her little neck and it's going to, tickle her. And before we get to the end of the song, she's already smiling and squinching up her little neck. And, I grew up with Sesame Street, and I know it's on HBO now, but I used to say, and I would even make some songs up when my kids were little to teach them how to spell the city we lived in. It was Lawrenceville. Yes. Well, it was hard, it was long.
Oh my goodness.
LAWRENCEVILLE. And I always thought, if they would just teach everything with a song, I could remember all these crazy history facts that I didn't really care about, because it's just rote memorization. But like you're saying, we can pull up a song from junior high and high school and know where we were and the feeling. And I love that you have said, for the kids, make a playlist, because it seems like once they get to be 5 or 6 or whatever, we're not sitting down singing with them
Right.
anymore. They like Kids Bop or whatever the music is now. But yeah, I love make a playlist, pandemic playlist.
And it could even be like the gratitude. You could have your own playlist, but then here, what's our family? We're getting ready for dinner dance party, or our family, we need to reset this mood dance party playlist, and we have everybody get to contribute what some of their favorite songs are. And then, those memories serve you in the future. You hear those songs and you think back, oh, when, our family was dancing together or annoyed with each other or whatever, and it can build those bridges kind of across time, the way music goes into your brain in a different way than spoken language.
Yes, and it stays. When you first advertised, and I say advertised, you put this out on Instagram is where I saw it. You said you don't even have to know the Enneagram to learn from this. And that's what I love. There's still, not everybody sees the whole picture of the Enneagram. It's, whatever stigma might be attached to it. But the beauty of this, as you've said, is looking at understanding the centers, as we call them, but looking at a child. And tell me what you would, if you were in a classroom, how would you describe a heart-centered child? What would you pick up?
Okay, so in my classroom experiences, most recently, being a substitute, I think I would see the heart-centered kids were sometimes the ones who would come right up to me and want to help. They want to be the helper. They know what needs to happen, and they're happy to run to the office to drop off the attendance, or they're happy to be the door helper, even if, maybe their job was to pass out the papers. They want to do all the jobs because they want to be really helpful. Or certainly the kids who visibly are sad when somebody falls and hurts themselves. I was mostly in elementary schools, if you couldn't tell. But yes, the kids who have kind of their heart on their sleeve, who might be the kid that's just having a hard, sad time at that moment. But the kid who reaches out to that child who is having a hard time, and those kids that are maybe that it's the child that's doodling and just entranced with maybe their own project that they've got going on at the desk. But yeah, the kid who's craving connection, the kid who is eager to be with friends, or to help the teacher, to help the friends. Those kinds of people tend to be heart-centered people.
Yes. And that's, again, why I really love what you're doing, because you don't have to say, oh, this child is a type this, or even attempt to do that. And you've got a lot of great information on this. Again, we'll put a link to it. And so what would you say a body-centered child? How would you say, oh, this one is in the body center?
The body center. With lots of experience observing my own child, who I feel is probably quite body-centered, a couple of them actually. Movement, of course, that kid who was bouncing off the wall, that kid who was fidgeting, that kid who cannot sit still, that kid who might be really distracting if they have to sit still. And so those are the ones that, maybe the teacher's got a special station for, or whatever, if things go awry, or even if they're not awry, but the child just feels like, oh, I need to move. I need to get off my chair, and it's a safe place for me to go in this corner. And it's not a punishment corner. It's an opportunity corner to help me focus on what is happening in the classroom at large. So yeah, the kids that are moving, the kids that might feel fairly distracted easily. I think, yeah, that's maybe an oversimplistic way of thinking of body-centered kids, but they usually are moving a lot and tend to, I don't know, that's how they kind of move through the world, and don't like to sit still. And maybe it's true that they can have pretty good body awareness. I'm not 100% that that's true, but I feel like they get so much practice moving that they might tend to be the kids that are pretty good moving through space, pretty coordinated.
And of course, then the head type, or the head center.
The head types, I think of those wonderful kids. They're all wonderful in their own beautiful ways. It's worth emphasizing. But that bookworm, that kid who's got his nose or her nose in a book all, any little bit of free time, maybe someone that's, maybe they're just sitting and thinking, and you can tell it's not like a daydream, but it's like they've really got something they're mulling over. And that might be also the kid who wonders why. Well, but what if this? And the kid who is asking questions a lot and curious as all get out. Just that child who wants to know more, who is really enjoying the subject matter or wants to do that extra project to learn even more.
It's funny that, again, I love getting deeper, with the types, but I think people who don't know the Enneagram very well would not put 7s in the head center.
Right. And 7s can look like they're in the body center.
Exactly.
They're fidgety and going all over the place. So that was one thing I thought of, gosh, that can be tricky.
Yeah, it can. But then if you are aware, then you can go, oh, okay, she's, or he or she went from that idea to that idea, and they jumped up and had another thing they wanted to do or go, but it's all going on in a type 7's head. Yes. So where a 5 who's in the head center, or even a 6, their reaction is going to look different. So I think as the teacher who knows more, a little bit of the depth can understand, because a type 2 child who cares about people and connection can find a lot of connection in a book. And just, be really
true, very true.
So very connected to, all of the heart centers.
Absolutely.
And 3s will look different. But I love that there's, a beginning path of understanding this child reacts this way, this child might think this way, and here's something I could do to help.
Yes, I love that you put it as a beginning, because I thought, oh goodness, I don't mean to, hope it doesn't come across like, this is your stereotype. Your bookworm has to be a head center. Maybe not. Maybe they're a heart center that is really connecting with the characters and compassion. That is so true. And thinking about the 7, those head center people are seeking security. And as we know, 7s are seeking that security through stimulation. What's next? I need this idea. And what about this? And what about this? We must consider all those possibilities in order to feel secure. And then the 6s are they're seeking their security through questioning. I want to find out this, think about this, troubleshoot that. And then the 5s are seeking that security through observation. They're just taking it all in and trying to feel that security through mastery of whatever that subject is.
So yeah, it can get layered upon layer upon layer. And that's where I find the beauty of it. But in this situation, as a parent who doesn't know the Enneagram, as a student who doesn't, I love your presentation and your ideas.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to go, since I'm still on a screen share, I'm going to go quickly down to the very bottom. See, and it's also pretty. You can designed very well. But starting here, you have a great reference page, or some pages. Let's see, different podcasts, The Lazy Genius. But what I think is cool about this, even where you talked about the koosh balls, if I hover over on the word koosh ball, you have embedded a link to all of these things, to the podcast, to the books. So this is a really thorough presentation.
Well, thank you.
And I hope you have opportunity to do it again. I know you will.
Thank you. Yes, I am ready to roll. I'd love to share it again, and hopefully we'll be able to do that sometime in the near future.
Well, in conclusion, what calming or words do you have for the uncertainty that's going on right now?
Oh my goodness. I guess I would say, thinking about that playlist, finding something enthusiastic and inspiring in big and loud ways perhaps, but then being able to find that quiet song that brings you to a sense of hope a sense of rest, because we all need to take a break from the stress of all of this and have that safe space to just step away. Maybe there's a little spot in the classroom, or maybe there's a spot in our homes that we encourage each other to go to, and we take our own time ourselves, and hopefully daily to set aside that time to find a way to care for ourselves, whether it's with music or like my ideas, yoga for the body, or just going for a walk, or having that gratitude for the heart, and just anything for the mind that can kind of settle it, not in a numbing way necessarily, but more of that intentional piece that we can just practice that every day. It's important.
And while this presentation is a back to school presentation and geared towards teachers and kids, but mainly towards interacting with the kids, I can tell you, just reading this and going through this myself, it's like I still am that little kid inside in many ways, don't you know? And
yes,
the anxiety builds up, and I turn to music. I turn to, getting a place to get out of my head, and all these things. I look at your suggestions. It's like, yeah, don't forget, you still need those things too.
Oh, thank you so much for your kind words and for letting me come and visit with you. I just loved it.
Well, I apologize for the time mix-up, but hey, we got it. I truly appreciate connecting with you. I know you love the Enneagram like I do. And I end most of my shows by saying, I hope you truly get to understand and love the joy of who you are by loving your own number. Thank you, Nancy.
Love it. Thank you, Danae. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And we'll stay connected. I'll see you out there. Okay. Have a great day.
You too.